Okay, ladies and gentlemen, xenomorphs and predators, welcome back to Unsheathed, a back azimuth solutions, another tool to help anyone that wants to listen. Today on this episode interview, Menage a Trois, we have Mason Rod, i.e. Dead Gunner Poetry. Mason,
Using it to even say my last name. I love it. Mason Rodrigue. But yeah, I mean, Marines, everyone in, in my unit knew me as Rod because taking a Z off of Rodriguez just really throws people for a loop that they can't understand. Maybe in the Air Force, they could have pronounced it where the ASVAB requirements were a little higher.
Yeah, bro, I was a waiver. That's not happening.
I don't know, man. But yeah.
Okay. So right off the bat, so this is not scripted or anything. This is completely free flowing. The intention behind Unsheathed, Mason, is so individuals, if they choose to, can listen in on the various participants of these sessions and learn a thing or two. This is not a pro-war. This is not a yut Marine Corps thing. This is for individuals that want to learn a thing or two about time in service if they're still active, when they get out, things that they need to be cognizant of, be ready for. So it's another tool out there that is healthy for the community. And with that being said, before we dive into you, let's first and foremost give a shout out to Quad Rail Gang. That's your cup. You're up. There you go. Give that guy a follow.
He's just some kid in the Army sitting in. He's somewhere in the Middle East right now, and he just posts a lot of stuff about how much better quad rails are for. If you're into AR-15s, it's relevant. If not, you're gonna be like, what kind of nonsense is this? It's the gun community on Instagram and YouTube is one of the more interesting rabbit holes I've dived down. But yeah, them, Mission Essential Gear, Patrol Base Abate, the usual suspects. Cheers.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're gonna go backwards. What branch? Who were you with? Keep it PG for that stuff.
All right, yeah. I'm probably the only guest you're ever gonna have to tell. Like, this is not a yut thing. This is not a But if the video is going along with this, obviously I was in the Marine Corps. I was in from 2016 to 2020. I was a machine gunner, 1st Battalion, 6 Marines. My path to the Marine Corps was a little different than most. I joined at 26. I went to college with the goal of walking on to play football, which I did, got injured. It's neither here nor there. And then I wanted to become a Marine Corps officer. So I lost a ton of weight. I went from like a big yoked up like fullback to a Marine, and the body type they would like for a Marine, and got all my stuff in order, and then promptly got a DUI at Mardi Gras and did 2 years of probation. Yeah. And the fastest way in was to enlist. And they were like, "Are you sure you want to enlist with a college degree at 26 years old?" And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to get behind a machine gun. I want to deploy. I want to get mine. Naive, misguided, hindsight's 2020, right? But yeah, so I enlisted at 26. My first deployment was to Syria, really fast. Then we came back. And by my 2-year mark, I had kind of spiraled into some of the more toxic parts of junior Marine culture. We'll just call it that.
Yeah.
I was drinking a lot. It deeply affected the relationship I was in, which, I wanted that to be something long-term, but it kind of eventually became her or the Marine Corps kind of thing. And it's a thing I know a lot of guys struggle with, because the poetry I've shared about relationships usually it's a much more of a response or feedback or guys messaging me to talk about it than the just super like, moto or, the stuff about the culture itself. It's stuff guys don't like to talk about, but it's a real thing. relationships in the military are hard, and they're super hard in the Marine Corps for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, there was a breakup. There was another DUI. I feel like we're going to get into a conversation about patterns later on in here at some point. But, I've used alcohol to cope with things for a long time. And that's part of toxic junior Marine culture. We'll call it that again. But so, yeah, I went from being on a meritorious corporal board before my 2-year mark to private first class Rodrigue second award. And that was a real rock bottom for me. So I started writing about my experiences just to myself, because I read a lot, which kind of, I get tired of like the crayon eater jokes. I know Tom Killzone, he hates them because he's legitimately one of the smartest people I've met. But I found it true that like a lot of Marines I met were actually a lot smarter than you give them credit for. I read a lot, and I read a lot of memoirs from guys and they were kind of just coming out, but guys from the global war on terror, earlier parts of that time period. And a lot of them did not match the like World War II memoirs, where it was very much like, I was in the greatest generation and we did the big push for Uncle Sam. And it was a lot of guys who were like, hey, I joined and it was not what I thought it would be. And it had some effects on me. There's a trend of what I went through being pretty common. So I started writing myself, mostly poetry. And I just kind of saved that up for a while. And when I got boots, they showed up the same rank as me. And it was like, I can roll over and be one of these dudes who loses rank and it's just like, whatever. Or I can be the kind of person I was raised to be and say, I made a 4-year commitment to this organization. I made a mistake. I'm going to own it. I still owe them everything I bring to the table.
Yep.
So I got hyper involved in, taking a leadership role, almost too much sometimes. And it turned my career around. So fast forward to Okinawa, mid-summer of 2020. It's the era of COVID.
This is not deployment too?
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who will tell you it's not a deployment.
Anytime you leave the country, it's a deployment, homie. Doesn't matter if it's
I'll
UDP
talk
or
to Adam Goons up about that. I hate that mindset because it shows insecurity for other people. It's like there's two places it can come from. It can come from guys within themselves who are like beating themselves up because they haven't gotten their cool deployment that they want yet. Or it's guys who have done that and they want to make like today's Marine feel less than. And it's like, bro, you already did that. Why are you insecure about what Marines today are doing? Yeah. They are forward deployed. When COVID is not, like COVID had us locked down to Schwab. We couldn't leave the base. But before that, we were scheduled to go to the Philippines, South Korea. Like we were going to be all over the place. The military does force projection. You're deployed, like end of story. That's neither here nor there, right? So we were locked down and they offered to try to get my NJP removed. I'd made like, that good of an impression with the command. They really wanted me to stay in. So I went for it and that got kicked back. They were like, no, we're not taking the NJP off. They had gotten it done for a couple other guys. Mine for some reasons, they would not remove it, which pretty much took the re-enlistment offer off the table. And they were like, you want to do 2 more years, extension, Lance Corporal? I'm like, bro, I'm 30. I make below the poverty line and I live in the barracks. I live in Camp Lejeune barracks. You think I'm going to extend for 2 years? I'm like, it's, guys re-enlist because that bonus moves them up to the next phase of their life where they kind of have some money under them. And, like in full disclosure, I was not responsible with my money as a junior Marine either. Like a lot of that is our own fault. But without that on the table, it's like, this is just not a good choice for me at all. So I got out. After that got taken off the table, there was a lot of like drinking at the barracks and, just kind of going through it. And I'm toward the end of my time in service and I started sharing like a lot of the poetry I wrote with my boys. And they were like, dude, this is really good. it was expressing things that we had all gone through. And it was like I had just found a way to channel it into something that was relatable. So they were like, dude, make an Instagram, bro. It'll blow up. And I'm like, no, it won't. So I make an Instagram, and they were right. And it's just been an interesting ride because simply sharing poetry and being vulnerable. And I was not attached to it. My name was not on it for the first like 8 or 9 months. But it put me in touch with so many people, and it's opened doors, and it's, like I have a book deal now. It got me in touch with Tom, who runs, the Kill Zone Instagram account and founded Patrol Base Abate, because like for people who don't know him very well, he taught literature at the Naval Academy for a while. So he is big into all things literary, and he stumbled across my thing, and some of the things I wrote really resonated with him. So, I was up there in Montana, and we kind of already had some rapport, and I volunteered to keep working with Patrol Base Abate, and it's allowed me to do so many cool things.
Yeah.
That's the whole.
Yeah. The whole sphere.
Yeah.
So if
then to now.
if anybody's fast forwarding through this video right off the bat, we got Mason here. He runs Dead Gunner Poetry Instagram page. He is a Achilles of the poetic battlefield.
Oof.
One of a few. I know that's a pillar. You better uphold it. And because Mason had such a desire to emulate Johnny B, John Basilone, we'd have a Goons Up flag up in honor of Mason, DGP.
No, that's because you were in 1st Marine Division. Don't lie.
It's for the gun for you. It's for the gun for you, brother. Yes, I've got 1st Mar Div. Yeah. So with the very interesting experiences, to put it lightly, what was some awesome stuff that happened when you were in? Like, you got to go to Syria, you got to go to the Pacific, which is awesome.
Like while I was in?
Yeah.
Yeah, the people. It always comes back to the people. There's this caricature of Marines specifically as like dumb, and like it's just people love to pick on them, and to me it's like, they hate us because they ain't us. It's and I'm not trying to alienate anyone listening who's from the other branches, but like that was I can only speak to my own experience. But I met these guys, and like I had said earlier, like I went in older, and I was home on leave. I think it was right before my deployment, and I was just kind of talking about like what life was like being in an infantry unit, being a boot, right? Getting my door kicked in the middle of the night with some seniors. Drills now, go. It's like, oh my God, right? And things even worse than that. And they were like, is it weird that like you're surrounded by like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids? And I was like, well, 1, yes, but 2, no, not really, because we have so much more in common just by being Marines. It's like and this is kind of a thing where it's now that I'm involved with the veteran community, you start meeting Marines from all these different generations, and there's a common thread no matter when you serve. It's like, and it's interesting hearing like what's different and what's new. Social media played a huge impact on influencing Marine culture. I've met some guys who were in around the late Iraq, early Afghan surge, who were like, Terminal Lance, like hurt the culture. And then there's some people who think, well, to me, it was originally just him expressing what he went through, but it promoted this kind of almost like dirtbag kind of thing is cool. And that was really the vibe when I came in too. And it's just, there's so much more. All that aside, like there's more in common than there is different. Like the generations of people are different. But at the gun shop I work at, there's a guy, I hadn't met him yet. They're like, yeah, this guy Gunny. I'm like, who's Gunny? He's like, he used to work here. This guy comes in, he served from 65 to 85. He's the coolest old man I've ever met. And when I met him, I wear this hat to work every day. I'm like, so I'm like, you must be Gunny, huh? He's like, yeah. I'm like, Marines. He's like, yeah. I was like, Semper Fi. I'm like, I just got out like a year ago. He's like, oh, no way. He's like, so we just start talking. He's telling me like story. Like he had a blast. He loved it. The guy owns like 23 1911s. He's just like the coolest. But as I'm saying, a guy who got out in 85, I wasn't going to be born for another 5 years. We clicked.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And he doesn't know nothing about Instagram or TikTok or none of that. And he'd be probably appalled by half the stuff kids post these days. But like at the end of the day, the proficiency. So this is the big concern is like, well, are they even still proficient? I'm like, the guys I served with were incredibly proficient at their job. They just had social media like everyone else, you know?
Yeah. Dude, I was yesterday, perfect timing. Yesterday, I was at the gym and I saw this kid there. Fit kid, had koi fish on his arm. You can already see where I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
Had a nice haircut, and on the back of his cutoff shirt, it said Okinawa. I was like, brother, were you in? He's like, no, I'm actually still in. I'm like, really? And this kid is telling me like he was in first tanks. He was in 2-3, which apparently is getting disbanded.
They're cutting, they're trimming some Victor units. It's a shame, but it's all part
crazy.
of it.
Well, and he was a oh god, tow gunner, 52.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nerd.
And he was telling me how, because I asked him from all the stuff you see on social media, not being able to validate half of it. I'm like, is it true that they're getting rid of machine gunners? He's like, they're trying to get rid of all of it and make like operators. And I'm like, to me, it's mind blowing, but times are changing, Bob Dylan, it is what it is. But it's just cool that we can meet a random dude and just connect on anything. And funny enough, this kid, before he revealed that shirt, he was rocking a hoodie from Goons Up. I was like, oh man.
Goons Up. I was talking to we'll give a shout out to Red Stick 6. So this is another interesting thing with social media is the rise of like leadership accounts.
Yeah.
He does it because most people in recruiting do it, but Lieutenant Colonel Matt Perry, actually, I don't even know if he's Lieutenant Colonel. He might be a major. I don't know. I'm out, so it doesn't quite matter. And if he ever listens to this, I'm sorry for the disrespect. I just know him as another guy who grew up in South Louisiana and is in the Marine Corps. And but whenever he's doing any kind of work in New Orleans, he drops by. We grab a beer, like at my neighborhood bar. We catch up. We watched LSU get like rocked last night. Oh well. We were talking about how much Adam with Goons Up changed the culture. It's like what I was talking about earlier, where it was like being a dirtbag was cool.
Yeah.
He started the Goons Up page while I was in Syria. And it was one of those things where it's like you could take pictures, but you're not sharing them. You're not doing any of that. Like if you even have Wi-Fi while you're there. We've been home for 1 or 2 months. So I'm like, I'm just sending some stuff to Goons Up every now and then, right? People were like, and it became this thing where in the field, like people would take videos of ranges or pictures, and some dudes were still resisting it. They're like, "Well, you're gonna send it to Goons Up?" It's like, yeah, I am, because being a machine gunner is like really cool. Like it's literally the coolest job I'll ever have in my life. And I'm not saying that like I'm gonna do other cool things for sure, but that to me, I loved it. I loved every part of that lifestyle, and it went from Goons Up with 5,000 followers and people ragging on it to Goons Up with 120,000 followers, and everyone wears his shirts. And now there's Tubes Up, there's Maneuver Up. Like it changed the culture.
Hey, I'm gonna say it though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drop it just because you had the audacity to say it. 31s are not the best. Former 11 squad leader Maneuver Up, hands down.
I said it was the best job I would ever had. All right. We
okay.
did it.
Hey,
you're the main effort.
We still gotta give each other slaps.
You're the main effort, even though I can still like clear a room too. Whatever.
My best friend in my first unit was a machine gunner, and our seniors hated the fact that we were married, as they called it, and it was sprinting through the Iadrain Valley just to get to his room before one of them got me. But no, you guys are your own anomaly of a breed,
Yeah.
and I love it.
It's his own thing. And you know, but it changed, you know, it changed the culture, and it changed it for the better. But without diving too much, I feel like I've digressed from like what was awesome. And like what was awesome was being a part of something so much bigger than me. And I remember in infantry training battalion, we asked one of the machine gun instructors like what his favorite part of the Marine Corps was. And he said shared suffering. And I was like, well, that sounds badass. But in my head, I'm like, he's saying that to sound badass to students. But when you look back, and you probably say the same thing, when you look back, there's a lot of parties and good times you remember, but what sticks to people's heads is, do you remember this time where this field op or this mission or just something went like totally off the rails? It was just a bad situation, and everyone just got through it because they were together. And you know, like you just remember the bad times and like laugh.
Yeah.
It's the people. It really is. This flag behind me has over 200 signatures on it. I went by it at the PX like about 5 days before I got out, because my terminal leave was during our post-deployment leave. So I knew a bunch of my friends wouldn't be there if I waited till the last day. I got I was in weapons company, so I was attached to all the line companies throughout the workup. I'm very social. I got to know a lot of people. And I was also a 28-year-old PFC who was a squad leader for the heavy machine gun section. So it was one of these things where it's like everyone kind of knew of me. It was like, this is just this weird thing going on in weapons company. And there were two of us. My best friend also had just gotten knocked down to PFC. We were both like in leadership billets. Yeah, it's welcome to the Marine Corps. So, and then I went to like kind of my platoon command, and I was like, hey, Staff Sergeant, you think like Sergeant Major would sign this? And he was like, I'll ask him. And then he texted me, he's like, come up to the CP. So like on either side of the EGA, I have like my battalion commander and Sergeant Major on there. It's like, it's just the people. I miss the people, miss being part of it. I miss looking left, looking right, and knowing that I could count on those people for anything, because we had all been tested. We had all been through the thing. And there's not a lot of things that recreate that outside. And I think it's part of why patrol base Abate is so important, because it's not your unit, but the further you get away from being in, you just kind of want other veterans in general around you, because they get it, even though it's different. And I think one of the coolest things is that what I love about it is that it's open to all branches, all ranks, no combat experience required, because so many organizations draw that line. And it's like, I want to hear what somebody went through in a job I didn't even know existed in the military, because the common thread you're going to find is
the people,
and that most jobs, no matter how close or far away they are to the combat, require a ton of cohesion and teamwork and long hours and high demands, you know.
So with your I'm going to say roller coaster experience in the service, your ups and downs, as you were getting out of the service, how, just for my own curiosity, how long was the transition period? Like, did you go through like steps and taps, or did you just get your 214 and sprint out of there?
Man, it was rushed. I was barely on the cut. So for those of you who don't know, the Marine Corps expects 2 deployments out of infantrymen. If you're in the O3 field, you are expected to do 2. And and it all kind of depends on when you get to your unit. So you'll drop to your unit and they'll do a workup and deploy. If you get there early in the workup, usually you have to swap units and do your second workup somewhere else, jump on another unit right in the middle of it to make both your deployments. That's just kind of the way that it works out. It worked out. Like a lot of my friends that I went to Syria with were not able to make that deployment with us to Okinawa. They had to go to other units. I just barely made the cut. So, and this was before COVID, when you had to do a 2-week quarantine when you got home, even though you weren't sick.
Yeah.
Right. So we got home, 2 weeks of quarantine, and then I had about 2.5 weeks to do the checkout. So because it was such a tight timeline with the deployment, I did my transition readiness seminar a year before I got out. and they allow you to start going a year out. They just don't like you to.
Okay.
But I went through it, and it's kind of like what we were talking about, I think, before we hopped on this and started recording it, but it's just all resume writing and how to do a job interview. That has such little bearing on how to transition out of the military successfully. That it's not addressing like what you're going to go through mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. It's not. It touches a little bit on how to use your GI Bill, which most guys want to do. They talk about the Skill Bridge program, which I think is great, and I think a lot of dudes should use it. If there's a program and it's something they want to do, nothing offered appealed to me and what I wanted to do. But but it's like you're gonna learn this and then forget about it because you're about to get out. I wouldn't, using the GI Bill is not just something that is inherent. It's not intuitive. You have to go ask somebody, how do I do this? And I'm gonna, for anybody listening who's about to get out, I'm just gonna tell you, like, it's hard to get answers from the VA. It just is. It's not that they don't want to help you. It's just hard to figure out where you're supposed to even go to start, if that makes sense.
With that right there, to interject, with everything you know now from the time that you got out of the service, for anyone that is in the process of getting out soon, or just got out, what words of advice would you have for that specific topic?
That's about to get out. So I got out and I didn't really have a plan, and they preach have a plan, so on and so forth. And it's like, life happens and plans change. Some people know what they want and they get out and they hit it. But most of my friends I know that got out and did one thing have transitioned to something else. No plan survives first contact. You kind of just have to get out there and live. As far as advice for the VA, if you are planning on claiming disability, right? And I think everyone should, if there's something that actually affected you, like, go get that recorded, but go get something right now before you get out that makes it service connected. Every veteran service officer I've talked to has said, yeah, Marines come to us and they're usually the most physically jacked up. And if you're the type of person who's willing to talk about your PTSD or things like that, they're usually pretty, psychologically and emotionally, they got some things to work through. And their file does not reflect that because they never go to the doctor. It's like being on a football team and everyone's trying to stay relevant and they're hiding injuries so that they can play in the next game. Because I feel like that's the closest analogy I can make to how Marines handle their health. So if you're on the way out,
go to BS.
Go to BAS and then get out and go to this BAS. No, but I mean, really, like, if you're in, go talk, go say, hey, this happened and I have this issue and I never got seen for it. And say it happened. Like, this is when it first started aggravating me and I just haven't gotten treatment and I've dealt with it. Because every Marine I know is when we were all active duty, we were all dealing with some type of weird chronic pain. Just floating pain going from this to that. Something's always like a little off and you just gutting it and getting through it. It's part of the culture of the Marine Corps. And that's also true of like every branch. If you have something that you were like not upfront about, or you were like, I'm gonna, I don't want it to like affect my work, like go get it documented. Because everything I claimed, they, physically looked at me head to toe. They did all the exams. They're like, you're not lying about any of this. But none of it's service connected. So now I'm playing the game of how do I
make it service
connected. And there's there's steps in order to do that, but it's like, save yourself the trouble, get it done. Because what I have found from the more veterans I've met, it's no secret, if you have a social media account, that a lot of veterans become entrepreneurs. They get out and they start things. A lot of veterans don't get out and work for someone else. Because after you work for the military, it's like, I want to do things how I want to do it, because I don't know. And you know what?
You get abrasive to working for the man.
You kind of do. But also, I think people in the military learn how you learn so much about how to run something, because if you, even in 4 years, you're going to eventually get to a point where you're at least middle management.
Yeah.
I guess something that's similar to what middle management would be,
Yeah.
and a lot of guys like this. And so, I kind of dogged them like, oh, they don't help you write a resume. I'm like, learning how to write a resume is important, because we had a guy who was like, well, he's like, all I was like a squad leader. And I'm like, what do you mean all you were? And I like piped up, because the in the class did not know how to help him either, how to turn that into a resume. I'm like, what do you mean all you were was a squad leader? You were responsible for 15 people, all of their equipment, which probably totaled up to like
Couple million.
like a million, maybe, I don't know. Like, so I was in a combined anti-armor team with trucks and explosives and heavy, it's like that's close to $1 million of equipment.
Yeah.
Right there. So it's like, dude, you gotta give yourself credit. A lot of this stuff is going to transfer extremely well. But I'll tell you, like right now, so like I worked at a refinery for 6 months, and it was like, that's a great gig. There's
After.
Right. So I was unemployed for about 3 months. That was kind of it was a dark phase. Like I was enjoying getting out, but I was also kind of like, what am I doing? And like, am I going to get a job? Like I would like to start making some real money, because I just, made peanuts for 4 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of my value at the time was tied to money. And trust me, like you need to make money. You can't not work, but it was tied to like making as much as possible. Right. So I was working 60, 80 hours a week at this job at the refinery. And you go from being in the Marine Corps where you're like really good at your job. And I was good at that job too. It was not as hard to learn as they made it out to be. It's just working in refineries can be really dangerous. But I was making, it was like a 6-figure gig. Because you're always at work. But you just get tired of like, this is going to sound so like jaded, but civilian leadership, because in the Marine Corps, no one's going to hold you to a standard that they haven't taught you how to do inside and out. Before they start actually like chewing ass and getting on you about something, they've taught you, right? No one's mad at you for stuff you don't know. And it's just, it's not like that. And even like the, the gun store I'm working at right now, like I kind of got like fussed a little bit over some paperwork that was done wrong. And I was like, that was the first time I did it. And you haven't told me any of this. And you just kind of gut it. And it's like, I'm working here part-time. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to do it twice, but like, come on,
Yeah.
People
and I think
like, run my own business.
And I think a big thing, especially when dudes and dudettes get out of the service and go work at a company somewhere, no matter what it is, 6 figures or a librarian, you get the understanding truly of leadership versus management, and you learn about your own expectations and how to lower them when it comes to other people, especially bosses.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we
advice for when you get out?
Can we
all of that?
Say that again?
I think the question, the thread that we were on was like advice for someone about to get out or getting out.
And you said have a plan, have a secondary, have a tertiary, be able to ebb and flow with life.
To summarize it, I would say be willing to take the original plan, ball it up, and throw it in the trash, because that's what I did. Because I had been working there 6 or 7 months, and I had the opportunity to go to Montana for Patrol Base Abate, and they were not going to let me go. Not because I had work on those days, not because I couldn't swap shifts, but because I was on call those days.
Yeah, I get it.
I was like, here's my 2 weeks. I'm out. They're like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm out. They're like, where are you going? I'm like, I don't have a job lined up, but I didn't get out to not live. Yeah. And so be willing to do those things and invest in yourself, because that going there was entirely for me, and then it opened an opportunity for me to continue to serve. And that has done so much for me. It's some of the most meaningful things I've done all year. Not even some, they are. Those are the most meaningful things I've done in 2020. The time I spent serving Patrol Base Abate in Montana, and then when I went out to help with Operation Return to Base in North Carolina, helping get all that food donated for 1A when they got back from Kabul, that made my year. It was worth it.
Awesome, man. Yeah. And I had the ability to meet you, which was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
honestly.
Yeah.
Through this video, for people that are listening, I will, if you haven't already, go back to the first Unsheathed where it's just myself. I explain what Patrol Base Abate is, and just so it doesn't have to be re-brought up in depth every conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so you served your time. You made some great friends. You learned about the community, the tribe. You got out, worked a couple jobs, eventually invested in yourself, had a great year. In a broad stroke of it. How about some of that stuff that's not talked about generally within the community?
Not so nice.
The stuck points, the obstacles, like I like to refer to, the firecrackers.
Yeah, I mean, I still deal with those things to this day, and I think we like to put this thing where we're like, well, it's because of being a veteran, or it's because of transitioning, it's because of PTSD, it's this and that. And we were discussing kind of before the recording that suicides are up. Suicides are up in every demographic, not just the veteran community. Life is hard. Life might be a little harder because veterans have chosen to do some harder things in their lives, and it's a life. Serving makes a lifestyle where the highs are super high, the lows are low. There are big losses and there are big wins, and it is like you said earlier. It is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So it may make life harder in some ways, but it also made you harder. And
what I would like to very gently caress is maybe not certain scenarios, because they are yours and you are entitled to share them if you choose to. Certain unhealthy ways that you dealt with stuff, like the drinking. How did you get past those things? That's the most important thing, because as you know, and from everyone you've talked to that you've ever met from a uniform or civilian, we all deal with crap. It's called life. It doesn't matter if it's a battlefield or it's a 9-to-5 job. We all deal with stuff. So the specificity of the situations, I believe, will water down the message. It is how do you grow from those things? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, full disclosure, I for most of 2020, I had a trauma-informed life coach in lieu of not being able to see a therapist from the VA, because they could not work with my rotating days, nights, 12-hour shifts schedule. They're like, you have to get someone you can see same time every week. I'm like, I don't have the same schedule every week. They were like, well, we can't help you. I'm like, well, that's crazy, because you just diagnosed me with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Like, you said I have it and you're telling me you can't help me. So I paid out of pocket. I worked with Julianne Dallas. She's a trauma-informed life coach, because I didn't know where else to go. And it's not therapy per se, but I don't even know how to begin to explain it, but it helped. And it took me saying, I'm ready to talk to someone professionally about what I'm going through and listen to the feedback that they give me, and not try to go it alone, because you didn't go it alone in the military. Why would you go it alone after the military?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, that was that support I received there was huge. In the
So regarding Jules, and obviously I'm writing down everyone we talk about so I can shout them all out because they all deserve it.
Yeah.
For the sake of her, for the sake of BAS,
Mhm.
why'd you find a coach? What was the point? Why did you make that decision to spend X amount of money on nothing you could touch?
Because I didn't see a way out on my own. I did not see myself moving past some of the roadblocks. So I said earlier, like there are patterns, right? Our behaviors are patterns. The way we cope with, like clearly the way I coped with things did not change from the first DUI to the second. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it was just this thing where I was like, I need, when you get coaching, when you get therapy, when you, any of that stuff, it is someone who is giving, they have a 30,000 foot view. They can see the battlefield you're on in a way that you can't. They can see the landmines, and the more they work with you, the more they start to understand the kind of tactics that you use in your own life to bring all this back to like very relatable military terminology. The way I was going about my life, my tactics on how I dealt with situations, some of them worked because I've been successful in a lot of areas. Some of them were incredibly self-destructive, right? They start to learn and help you navigate toward whatever your objectives are, right? It's not just sitting there and crying the whole time. There were some conversations we had where it was like, this is awesome because I got X, Y, and Z going for me, and this is what I want to do next. And like you know, we have this this preconceived notion, you know, where we think therapy is this, and it can start out that way, very sad, very much like kind of mucking around and putting some of the stuff out there that you've been through and things often that you don't want to revisit. But you move past that, you get out of that muck, and you kind of get into a rhythm that helps you grow.
Think of it like a deployment. You got to go through the basic concepts of your work.
Same thing. Yeah. So, I mean, why did I get it? Rock bottom. I was at a rock bottom. I was about as low as I could get in the middle of like, you know, and I was hitting these things that I thought I wanted to do when I got out too. I'd gotten a good job. I'm making a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
Things in my personal life were still bad. Clearly money was not the answer. So yeah, that was huge. And then,
So
yeah,
just a sidebar really quick on what you just said. Money wasn't the answer.
yeah.
Honestly speaking, with the growth that you've had now, and I'm going to hit you with a fortune cookie.
Okay.
How would you, if money and living to work wasn't the answer, how do you define success now? If you even know, you don't have to know.
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
But you're working at it.
And I don't even wake up and think about like success. I wouldn't say that I necessarily have like a long-term plan. I have some things that I really want to do. And I kind of know where I want my life to go. I would like to have a family and some stability at some point. But right now I'm pursuing writing and using that in the kind of the platform I've built to continue to stay involved with nonprofit service toward veterans. And that's that for me right now, that is enough, right? Eventually I'll probably chill out and get it all out of my system. And, you know, I would love to be a high school football coach and teach civics. Although I think most principals will be like, you got to stop teaching civics because it sounds a lot like InfoWars in your classroom. I got students walking around here saying that bell-fed machine guns are a Second Amendment right. I can't have that in school. But I mean, for real, like, you know, there's a point, and I can see myself definitely there's a couple different career fields where I'm like, when I'm ready to commit to a career,
Mhm.
that is not just my creative process. Like,
So why aren't you rushing to a career right now? Why aren't you chasing after that?
because
Why are you just doing writing?
because writing is kind of opening up some opportunities to do some things that I don't think I'd be able to do with a career. Um, I've got a couple of, so I have a book coming out. We're shooting for, you know what? I'm not even going to say the expected release date because we're still in the editing process.
Can we know the name of the book?
The name of the book is Rock Eater, which is what the infantry training battalion instructors referred to the machine gun students that were going to eventually become machine gunners. And that just stuck with me. So the title of the book is Rock Eater. I have 3 other poetry collections in the works. You know, I spend a lot of my time writing. It's therapeutic for me. Um, it's awesome. It's what I like to do.
But coming from someone like me that can't write, that can only read pictures, um,
Coloring books.
and if there's words, someone has to read it too.
Yeah.
Well,
I like to call
what's the
rhymes for grunts. So it's
what's
perfect.
that?
I said I like to call my poetry is just nursery rhymes for grunts. So it's
There
perfect.
you go. But explain to not so much myself, but for other people, why is there such, and it's such a perfect question to ask you. Why is there so much fire between writing and poetry? Like, and I know the answer, but I'm asking the question, what's the point?
Like for the person that's doing it,
Yeah,
or
like why are all these guys and girls out there writing books and writing poetry? Like,
to me, it's having an honest conversation with yourself. My
awesome.
poems in a way are there are a lot of very honest conversations with myself about what I've done, what I've learned, what I've experienced. They so the book is essentially all the poetry I wrote while I was active and transitioning out, put in a chronological order. You can literally see my mindset shift and change
Mhm.
through the things I'm going through. It's very interesting when I put it all when I sat down and put it all in order. I was like, wow, you can see like
Growth.
you can see growth, and then you can see setbacks, and you can see there's a chapter in there called restriction. It's some of the darkest stuff I've ever written, but that was a dark time in my life, you know.
Okay.
And
Well, since you're sharing all these teasers right now, are we expecting this like next winter, this summer,
oh no, it's gonna be before the summer.
before the summer? Okay.
Before the summer. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, so that's why I think it's in poetry specifically. This is something the more writers I've got to know through working with like Dead Reckoning Collective. Shout out the publisher, Dead Reckoning Collective. Um, got to the homies, but the more I've gotten to know them and gotten to know other writers, I have like the phone numbers of dudes that I used to read when I was just starting to write, like Justin Egan and guy like those are people like I got to know through social media and through being willing to just share my own. But what I've learned is that poetry it has a lot of overlap with lyric writing, and everyone listens to music. Everyone listens to lyrics. Everyone has songs that lyrically hit them. Poetry is something that anyone can sit down and if they try, they can probably write it. And how good it's going to be kind of depends on how big your vocabulary is. I think that is, because the more words that you have, the more available rhymes you can create or whatever. I don't know. I'm not one of these people who studies literature or any of it. I just did it and people seem to like it. But it's accessible. It's where most writers start. I was talking to William Bolliard, who wrote Sober Man's Thoughts, Dead Reckoning Collective published him last year. He said he found a book of it's a volume of poetry written by Ernest Hemingway. And it was from like 1910. It's like, I didn't even know he was writing anything then. It's like he was writing poetry. He never published any of it, but it's where he learned writing. And, you know, I know this is very specific to me, but I would encourage any and all veterans to find some type of artistic expression, whether it be woodworking, whether it be, you know, I know a ton of Marine grunts get out and start doing work with their hands. That doesn't just have to be a construction job. You can learn to weld and make like sculpture art. You can do, there's all kind of stuff. You can learn to make knives, learn some type of skill that is working with your hands. I got a buddy, I met him at Fight Club. Cody Morris, he goes by the nickname Dirty. He blows glass. And when I was in Dallas, when I evacuated up there, I went watch him blowing glass at like their thing. It's so cool, but you can, watching him do it, he's just so in the zone. What it does is it gets you out of your head and you're just working on what you're doing. You know, I build guns, which is a bit too expensive of a hobby to always be doing, but I like, you know, I have a couple of different AR-15s that I'm always swapping out different parts on and stuff like that. And it's like, you're just doing that when you're doing that, you know?
And that's why
Find
like for me.
Find some artistic outlet.
What's up?
To find some kind of artistic outlet. That is it saved my life. I'll come straight out and say it. If I did not have this, I don't know how I would have transitioned. I can't fathom it.
And at the end of the day, whatever works for anybody, it's all that matters. Like on the artistic sense, like for me and anyone that's looking for other hobbies, photography, it's actual practice of gratitude, or rock climbing. I mean, you have to be in the zone on that one.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up photography because like I had written a ton of friends who supported me, like put it on Instagram, right? When I first started the account, the pictures that were up there were very like blah, like didn't really catch the eye. A friend tells me, she goes, take all that shit down, download these apps, edit them, polish them up, do something. She's like, you got to. I'm like, but the whole point is the poetry. And she's like, Instagram's a visual medium, you freaking meathead. Like, come on. Like you have to draw eyes to it. And it's like, wow, she's not wrong.
Yeah.
And like, it got me into, I would say, pseudo photography. I only use like a camera, but you know, there's like there are so many objects that are very symbolic. And just simple stuff like that. There was one I wrote about, like my grandmother praying the rosary a lot while I was enlisted, and how I make like the analogy of like she prayed it cyclically, like the way I shot a machine gun, right? And the picture is some Link 7.62 over a K-bar with her rosary wrapped around the K-bar. And it's like, it's a beautiful picture and it gets the whole idea across. So like it can be anything. I'm glad you brought up rock climbing, because physical fitness, I let myself go this past year. I actually just hired a strength and conditioning coach, and I have a degree in strength and conditioning. He's writing my nutrition plans. He's writing a program. He's telling me when to rest. I'm like, I was in a rut of always doing stuff that worked, but my body has obviously changed. So 31-year-old Mason is not responding to the stuff that worked really well for 24-year-old Mason, because 24-year-old Mason had an 8-pack while, you know, slamming a case of beer a couple times a week and eating pizza on the weekends. And like,
not anymore.
It doesn't work. So I'm like, hey man, like I'm giving you the reins. I don't want to be in charge of it. I want someone else to be like, this is the protocol. And, you know,
and for the people that are still active that might be listening to this, that's what you call delegation.
Yeah. But it's, you know, I let work, you know, as an excuse. I mean, the work going from days to nights to days, 12-hour shifts. Yeah. It was really impossible to stick to any kind of routine schedule.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore. I never want to go back. I did that kind of work before I got in the Marine Corps too, because it makes a lot of money, but I never want to go back to that lifestyle because it destroys, it wrecks your health. Yep. Then I was in Montana for a month and a half, and then I came home, and then I was evacuated for a month, and just things kept coming up, and I kept saying, well, I'll get into shape later, right? And I just hit a point where I looked in the mirror and I was like, I don't For the first time in my life, I legitimately don't like how I look in the mirror. I don't like how I feel. I don't like how I get winded super easily. I'm like, there is no point in joining the military and building your body into what you build it into to get out and let that go away, because your physical health is what's going to carry you later into life. And not just that, but you're going to feel better when you're working out, when you're being active. Like I bought an old Alice frame rucksack, and I go on 1 ruck a week, like 4 to 5 miles, nothing heavy. And I'm not trying to chase some 6'5" company commander and keep up with his pace. Like I just go for a brisk walk, in the nice part of New Orleans.
Yep.
And it's great because I'm clear in my mind. I'm thinking I'm just moving, and it's just good. Right. You can't get out and get lazy. Rock climbing sounds cool. There's just nothing to climb in Louisiana. It's
Find an indoor gym, brother.
terribly flat. I'm sure there's one around here. I hear
Um,
jiu-jitsu is great. I would like to get into that, but one thing at a time.
Yeah. And we got no timeline, fortunately.
I'm not on a timeline at all anymore.
Yeah. So with first, right off the bat, I haven't said it yet, and I always try to say this to everybody. Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome for my service.
You're welcome for mine.
Okay. So you've talked about your time in service. You've talked about your time outside of service. You've talked about some of your hobbies, growth points, stuck points. For a individual that might be watching this at 2 a.m., what do you got for that person? What kind of tips and tricks can you share? What are some things that, I'm not saying use the I wish I would have mentality, but if you could go back to see a former Mason, what would you tell him with the knowledge you know now? When you were in those points.
I guess I would ask, why are they watching it at 2 a.m.? Like, are they just getting back from the bar and they had a great night, or is it 2 a.m. and they can't sleep and
They're having a bad night.
having a bad night? I would tell them that bad nights and rock bottoms and those low points are like weather. We get a hurricane once a year in Louisiana. It comes, it goes, you rebuild, right? You get thunderstorms, you get bad winters where it's cold, but you also get days where it's 75 and sunny and it's absolutely beautiful, and the birds are chirping, and it's just, and everything's right. Okay. Calling it a day because you're going through a thunderstorm is just, it's just not the answer. It's literally just bad weather. And if you put that in your mind and remind yourself that day always follows the night, like it's gonna get better.
Okay.
It's really outlasting it.
Yeah.
And if it's 2 a.m. and you can't go to sleep, Google something relaxing, like Tibetan monks chanting Om, or just something. Like I have like little different things. There's one where it's like Native Americans singing.
So
Like,
don't go look at military photos.
Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't dwell, don't fixate on what is bringing you to that place in the first place. I've been guilty of it. I've done it, but find something to just shift gears, get you out of that state where you're all in your head, get into your body, and try to get some sleep.
Okay. The most recent dip in your roller coaster, what sort of immediate action drills did you have? Like, do you like cold shower? Do you listen to your Buddha monk?
It's writing. I mean, writing is really like what I do. I'm one of those people who actually does not really care for the Christmas and holiday season. It's not my time of year for a handful of reasons, and you know,
And you wrote?
and I grow.
And you wrote during that
I
season?
wrote, yeah, I would write when
Okay.
I would get time. It's just it's a busy time of year. I'm looking back, I'm like it was a blur. I'm like, and I was kind of going through a funk. Like I was pretty depressed through a bunch of it. And I'm like, how did I get through that actually? Um, but now that I have some time, I'm doing the things that I like to do. I'm on a gym schedule. Um, I'm writing, you know, some type of having a routine helps so much, right?
Yeah.
What's that old thing like our moms and grandmas used to say? It's like idle time is the idle hands or the devil's playthings or something like that. But
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
like when you're sitting there, you're not doing anything, right? That's when all that stuff is going to creep in.
Yeah.
You know? Having some type of schedule and routine to stick to is huge. It's critical.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that.
Since quitting the job, it was chaotic, like the whole thing in Montana was like a dream. Like I'd never wanted it to end, but that has to end. You have to come home. After all everything that I did for Patrol Base Abate, I spent another week and a half out there. You remember Kyle, big Kyle? We went like camping in like this place, like up, it was east of, like 2 hours east of Missoula. It was awesome. Like I'm like, why would I just leave right away? I took some time for myself, and
Yeah.
then I was evacuated. It was a roller coaster. But really, mid-October, I could have gotten into some type of routine. But what I did instead was I moved to New Orleans and kind of just partied because I'm like, I'm in New Orleans, and I just, like I'm finally like done evacuating and all that stuff, and I didn't get in a routine, and it was fun for a while until the party was kind of over, and it's like, okay, what am I doing? Like, I realized like I was just not going. Like everything had kind of hit this point where I'm like, I'm not actually like doing anything right now. So believe it or not, I went and get a job. I worked 3 days a week at a gun shop, which that alone helps you stick to some type of schedule. I joined a gym. You gotta get in some.
You're working on the book.
I'm working on. That's more in the editing phase, and now everything I'm writing is for some books I'm planning to push out in the future.
Yeah, but you're staying busy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Okay. Any last fortune cookie that you want to share with the world?
You think I'd have like something really profound to say because I write all this poetry, but when I'm on the spot, I'm just like, I don't know, man.
No worries.
All the advice I have to give, I kind of just gave.
Hey, and the cool thing is, brother, you're human. You show up the best version that you can on every particular day, and you continue to grow through your writing while simultaneously enriching the lives of others from your words.
I hope I do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the best at poetry, like coming up with it. It feels more like vomit when I try to do it.
Yeah.
But the handful of you that do it though, it is art, truly. And with that being said, I've taken up almost 90 minutes of your time. So almost, yeah. So I want to take this moment from myself, Tyler, Unsheathed, BAS, to express the deepest of gratitude to you, Mason, Dead Gunner Poetry. I will make sure that I shout out these 15 different people we talked about as well, because
that's the thing. There's communities out there, and really everyone that we've mentioned is part of some type of community.
Yeah.
We may have we've talked about Patrol Base Abate, but that's the thing is when you get out, you're gonna miss your community. So go find one. And if you don't have one, go make one. Because no one's gonna give that to you. You have to get out there and find it. You know what I mean?
There's your fortune cookie.
There it is.
I knew it was coming.
I need to go to a Chinese restaurant, get a fortune cookie, and then just have that, whatever it says, that just be like my little piece of advice whenever I do stuff like that.
What you need to do is have, those tear off calendars for the individual days.
I've never had a calendar in my life.
No, but do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's the one day you rip it off, there's another one. You should have a Rock Eater calendar with little quotes like "Get that bleeping gun up" or whatever.
Alex Jones was right. Like, it's just
See?
honestly.
That'd be awesome.
No, it would be great because I say a lot of ridiculous stuff. Or most
Yeah, you
people
probably get arrested though.
stuff.
You probably get arrested once you publish your calendar.
I think free speech is still a thing. I don't know. I might get,
For now.
I might get censored. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
we're going to close up this recording. So from myself to you and any other mother that is watching this, thank you for your time. Mason, Dead Gunner Poetry. And as always, stay frosty and blaze forward.
Later, T.